Zay Flowers exposed Cincinnati Bengals fans after the Ravens' Week 5 incredible comeback win. Plus, Lamar Jackson is not satisfied with the victory. All that and more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher, Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today on this Victory Monday, making Locked On Ravens both a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Are free and available on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe. Also in audio form, where you can follow along and subscribe there for 5 days a week of daily Ravens coverage. Monday through Friday is our regularly scheduled programming. But of course, we go live after every single Ravens game like we did yesterday. One of the most fired up post-game episodes I've ever had doing Locked On Ravens in a good way after that Ravens Week 5 win over the Bengals. But we also have bonus episodes, bonus content, and a lot of other things here on Locked On Ravens. So be a part of the Locked On Ravens family. Really would appreciate that and would love that. And the support I've gotten on the show is absolutely incredible. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. Ravens win. They win over the Cincinnati Bengals by the final score of 41-38 in overtime. Was a crazy, wacky, wild, whatever you want to call it, was a crazy game. And the Ravens come out on top, a game that they trailed for not the majority of it, but for pretty much all the second half up until they won the game. And large part due to Lamar Jackson putting on that Superman cape, pulling out his Houdini powers, and making sure that he willed his team to a victory. But we, again, dove into a lot of that after on the post-game instant reaction show, which was amazing. I'm going to talk about a recap of that game throughout the show today, but there were also some things that happened post-game and after the game that obviously I didn't know about when we were doing the post-game that we're going to talk about here today. The first of which being Zay Flowers exposing Bengals fans, or in particular one Bengals fan, and the interaction that happened between Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, I believe Eddie Jackson, because Zay tagged him, so Eddie Jackson might have been there too. But it is going viral on social media right now. We have to talk about that and maybe how it contributed to a motivated Lamar Jackson and Zay Flowers, and honestly Ravens team in general. Then in the second part of the show, we know this about Lamar, but he expressed his dissatisfaction, not necessarily with how the win happened, but he's not satisfied till this team wins the Super Bowl. We'll talk about what he had to say. It was one word, and it spoke very loudly, but we'll dive into what Lamar did on the day as well. Then finally, we'll do just a day after recap. Again, it's nice to kind of have the instant reaction pod and then be able to come back the next day and do a little bit of a deeper dive into that. So let's dive into it. Let's dive into Zay Flowers and him exposing. So Zay posted a bunch of pictures on Instagram after the game of him, the team, the win, and all that. And then at the end of his, you swipe on Instagram, you see as many photos as people put. At the end of his slideshow, I guess, if we're going to call it that, there was a video. By everything in the video, seemed like it was taken on Saturday. The Ravens were out to dinner, it looked like. Lamar Jackson was the only one visible, but Zay Flowers did tag Eddie Jackson in it. It was Zay's video, and it clearly was a Bengals fan. And I don't know what kind of headspace she was in, what she was thinking, what kind of led her to do this, but apparently walked right up to Lamar and Zay in that table, put her arm around Lamar, and was starting to talk crazy to the Ravens. And, Zay whipped out his phone and started videotaping and said, "Oh, who's going to beat us?" And the lady looks at the camera and goes, "Who dey, Bengals, we're going to beat you," or what, all this stuff. And then you see Lamar, because the woman's arm is around Lamar. Lamar doesn't look happy about the whole thing. Obviously, like, he he handled it and was just kind of like, I guess, dealt with it. I don't really like that, though, because, again, Lamar clearly, was not into it at all. And why should he be, right? And I clearly, I would doubt he gave permission for any of that stuff. And he was kind of pointing at her and was like, it's going to be her fault. It's her fault. It's her fault. Because she's talking all this mess saying that all the Ravens are going to lose, Bengals are going to beat them, this, that, and the other. Walked right up to him, apparently. And Zay was like, oh, who's going to beat us? And she said it, and Zay, and I think it's Eddie Jackson in the background. I'm not exactly sure, but whoever it was, Zay is kind of laughing in the background saying like, oh, talk that talk, grandma. Talk that talk, grandma. It was more explicit than that, but obviously this is a family-friendly show, okay? So we're going to go with talk that talk. He said, talk that talk, grandma. And that honestly that was the best part of the video for me. But man, it just stuff like that. Like that's Zay, good on Zay for exposing that, because again, kind of a awkward interaction. Lamar clearly looked a bit uncomfortable, and I don't blame him. It stuff like that. It's like, just let the players enjoy what they're enjoying. Don't make it a whole big deal, especially when it's that, like, especially when you're going to heckle them and they're just trying to enjoy their night out, or getting ready for the game the next day and stuff, and their away team, they're in a different city, and that kind of happens. We don't know the whole backstory behind the video. Obviously, I'm sure that over the course of the week, we will get some level of clarification. Maybe Lamar will be asked about it. If, Zay maybe gets locker room, maybe he'll talk about it. But by the looks of it, it was just like, oh, this woman, this Bengals fan approached. And again, this is not a representation of all Bengals fans, right? If I were to classify every single Bengals fan in the world into that category, that'd probably be a little unfair, right? But there's been this brewing rivalry over the past couple of seasons between the Bengals and the Ravens, especially after the Bengals made the Super Bowl. They got Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. It's obviously AFC North football. And there's a lot more juice to that rivalry, especially within the fan bases. And it's a different type of rivalry than Pittsburgh. Like, obviously, that rivalry has been alive forever with Pittsburgh for Baltimore. But there seems to be more respect in that rivalry between Baltimore and Pittsburgh than there is respect between Baltimore and Cincinnati, particularly within the fan bases, right? I mean, I don't know. There seems to be that type of energy. So I feel like that interaction gave Lamar and gave Zay, and honestly, whoever was around and maybe the team, some extra motivation, and made it feel extra sweet that the Ravens were able to pull out that victory. And look, the offense went crazy, man. Like, Lamar went crazy. Zay went crazy. So maybe if there's someone to thank, we can thank that Cincinnati Bengals fan. We can thank that interaction. And the overall game that the offense had, I mean, Lamar kept them in it. We'll dive into this in the second, third parts of the show as well. But, you never know what'll be a motivation factor for a player. And if an opposing fan comes up to you when, you're supposed to be in your space, and, you kind of are having your moments leading up to the game the next day, and a fan comes up and puts her arm around you, starts talking smack and all this stuff. And again, I want to get the full backstory on it because, at the end, the woman was smiling. I don't really know how the interaction went after that. It was only about 20-second clip from Zay. So again, some context is probably lost within that. I don't want to just go making assumptions about everything that happened, but we can look at what we have presented to us. And it seemed like it was kind of a good old smack talk between Bengals and Ravens. The difference is it was a Bengals fan going up to Ravens players and making that a thing. So became national pretty quickly. Again, as I talked about, went pretty viral. But Zay went over 100 yards in this game and was cooking everybody. It felt like Lamar obviously was the MVP of this game and had one of the best games of his entire career. So he moves to 5-1 against Joe Burrow, 9-1 all time against the Bengals in this game. It hasn't been really not much of a contest between Lamar Jackson and the Bengals over recent seasons for multiple different reasons. But man, just not what I was really expecting to come out of the game, because there were so many good things to talk about with the game in particular, right? Lamar's masterclass, which we'll get into, why the defense struggled, which we'll get into. All of that's coming up on this edition and obviously throughout the rest of the week on this show. But the thing that caught everybody's attention was that interaction. Once that video was put out, obviously on Instagram, Zay, multiple other people put it out on social media like Twitter. I had it out there, and everyone's like, whoa, you really don't see stuff like that often, where a fan is just walking up to players like that in a space like that and kind of having that happen. But again, Zay obviously got a good laugh out of it. Obviously, so with the whole talk your talk grandma type deal. But you know what? Lamar comes out on top. Zay comes out on top. And those two and the Ravens send her and Bengals fans home sad. Coming up in the second part of the show, though, we'll be talking about Lamar Jackson not being satisfied, talking about his absolute hunger for greatness and how he was able to turn that hunger on Sunday into a win in Cincinnati. Stay tuned. A lot to get to on the show. First, the show is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. So for me, I've had a ton of great experiences over on LinkedIn, whether it's finding jobs, networking, connecting. LinkedIn has it all. LinkedIn isn't just a job board, and LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job. Might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit earth-leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free on LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. There are a lot of things that scare a lot of people. And for me, there are fears that I have that some are bigger than others, some are smaller than others, but Halloween's coming up and Halloween lets us have fun with what scares us. But what about those fears that don't involve zombies and ghosts? Therapy is a great tool for facing your fears and finding ways to overcome them, because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place and holding ourselves back. So therapy has so many different benefits, whether learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries, empowering you to become the best version of yourself. And it isn't for those who've experienced major trauma. It's for everyone. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. We're back our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here on this Victory Monday. The Ravens taking care of business somehow, some way against the Cincinnati Bengals in week number 5. They moved to 3-2 on the season. And in the final part of the show, alongside some other graphics, we will get into the AFC North standings. I'm recording this after the Cowboys and Steelers game went into Monday morning. So some very good news. I'll give a little hint here for your first place Baltimore Ravens. But we have to talk about Lamar Jackson some more. Again, just puts on the Houdini cape in this game, puts on the Superman cape in this game, and does his thing. Multiple plays being referenced. The big one, obviously, being that play. And by that play, I think everybody already knows what I'm talking about. But Isaiah Likely touchdown where the Lamar, the snap gets bobbled a little bit, fumbled a little bit. He picks it back up. Stiff arms Sam Hubbard like 3 times, runs to the sideline, and then chucks up that ball to Isaiah Likely in between 2-3 defenders. And Isaiah Likely comes down with the touchdown. In my opinion, there are a lot of plays that can classify as Lamar Jackson's best play of his career. To me, that was it. You can talk about the Bengals spin in 2019, the Isaiah Likely play last year, which was insane. But context of this game, to keep them in it the way that it did, the fact that it would bring up a 3rd and goal if he missed it, probably, maybe they don't score a touchdown there. Maybe they have to settle for a field goal. That changes the game. The context of the game and how incredible it was on all fronts, that takes the cake for me. And if you think it's a different play, I don't blame you. There's so many in Lamar's career you can point to that you can call the best play. But that was awesome. There were other plays in this game that were awesome too. Like that play that was actually, it was an incompletion, but Lamar starts running the opposite way. 2 Bengals defenders are chasing him, and then all of a sudden he just cuts it right back upfield. I have no idea why the Bengals were chasing him literally backwards. It's one thing east-west, but you're chasing the guy back, and then Lamar just cuts upfield and leaves 2 defenders in the dust, and it was an incompletion. And that play obviously went viral. Everybody was talking about it, and Lamar saw the clip. And, everybody's like, oh, this is such a great move, like incredible. Lamar's awesome. And Lamar just tweeted incompletion with a broken heart emoji, which speaks to, again, his competitiveness because it looked so cool and so great, but all Lamar is focused on is the actual results of the play, which at the end of the day was an incompletion. And so there were a lot of comments about, oh no, Lamar, don't worry about it. It was so cool. It was awesome. Like, don't, keep your head up. And then someone commented, is anything going to make you happy until you get that Super Bowl? And Lamar Jackson, one word, just goes, nah, with the 100 emoji. Nah. We know this. This is not news, at least not to me. I don't think it should be to Ravens fans. Lamar Jackson wants to win a Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson cares about nothing more than winning a Super Bowl. That is what his goal is, his dream is, not only for him, but for his teammates, for the city of Baltimore, for Ravens fans, for everybody, And I think after last year, and even if you want to go back to 2019, I think Lamar kind of has not a disdain for the regular season, but he's just kind of like, whatever, man. Like, who cares? 41-38, instant classic game, gets him a win and a much needed one at that. But Lamar's like, hey, where's that Super Bowl? It's not playoff time yet. And obviously Lamar knows regular season is important, right? I'm not saying that he just is kind of going half speed, not any of that. Lamar's competing. Lamar wants to win. There's nothing more that Lamar hates than losing. But Lamar's locked in. This was one of the best games of Lamar's career, and he's not satisfied. He's making sure that he is holding himself accountable for the mistakes he made in that game, because Lamar was not perfect in this game, by the way. Had a couple of throws that weren't great, whether bouncing them or there were throws up high. Obviously, the fumbled snap was not great, but that was more rush than anything else. But still, he was the one that fumbled it. But this was an all-time game from Lamar. Absolutely all-time game. He dueled it out with Joe Burrow, and he's not satisfied. Let's talk about the quarterback comparison here for this Week 5 game. Masterclass, both fronts. Give credit to Lamar, give credit to Joe Burrow. Both played out of their minds. Lamar, 26 of 42. That's a 62 completion percentage, 348 yards. He had 4 passing touchdowns to go along with no interceptions. Joe Burrow, on the other hand, 30 of 39, 77 completion percentage, 392 yards, 5 passing touchdowns with that one crucial interception late. But Joe was slinging the ball around the field, man. We'll talk about it in the final part of the show. This was an offensive masterclass, a defensive disaster class for both teams. And while the Bengals offense was great, the Ravens offense executed when it mattered. While the Ravens defense was awful, the Bengals defense was worse. And it's those little things in a game like this that matter. And so Lamar was finding time for himself, wasn't rushing for the most part. Again, we saw some plays where he was, and nobody's perfect. That's okay. But Lamar wanted this game, whether it was for reasons like proving Cincinnati fans wrong, like we saw in that video they posted, or, obviously the bigger motivation is getting to win for his team, right? We can all say that. We all know that. But this was, I can't say enough good things. Lamar was finding guys. He was spreading the ball around, which, again, I've said on the show multiple times. I love that from Lamar this season. I love that he is spreading the ball around in this game. And we'll get to some of those receivers here look, it's not the Mark Andrews show anymore. Hey, Mark Andrews was involved. Shout out to Mark Andrews for getting involved in this game. He had 4 catches in this one. So welcome back, Mark Andrews. But Zay obviously was the leading receiver, 7 receptions for 111 yards. But Charlie Kohler has a 55-yarder and then also has that touchdown. He had 3 for 64. Rashad Bateman, timely catches. Got to shout out Rashad, man. Rashad was awesome. This is one of the best games of his career, in my opinion, just in terms of timely catches and getting open at the right time. 4 for 58 and a touchdown for Rashad. You have Mark Andrews, I mentioned, getting involved, 4 for 55. Tylan Wallace, a couple of huge plays, and he refused to go. Tylan Wallace was playing physical in this game as a blocker and as a receiver. So shout out to Tylan, man. You got Isaiah Likely, who not necessarily big in terms of catches or yards, but 3 catches, 2 touchdowns. You'll take that any day of the week if you're Isaiah Likely. And then you have Justice 1 for 8, Nelson Aguilar 1 for 4, Derrick Henry 1 for 4. The Ravens didn't run the ball a lot in this game. And you know why? Because they were a negative game flow for the majority of the game and all of the second half, where they had kind of found a lead early, And then they were going back and forth a little bit, but then Cincinnati tacked on those points, and we will get to John Harbaugh's decision making in the final part of the show. I don't want to, don't want to think that anybody thinks I forgot that. We're not going to forget that. But the Ravens were in negative game flow, and it's something I had hammered home on the post-game show when we did it yesterday, of there's still this outdated and honestly kind of was never true narrative that in order to beat the Ravens, just go up and you win. And, if you force Lamar to throw the ball, you win. I mean, that's not how this works. It honestly has never really been how that works, ever. That's, again, outdated and shallow, all of that, Lamar's a guy that can will this team to a win, whether ahead or behind. And in a game that you thought really could have gotten out of hand with how that Cincinnati offense was playing, Lamar always kept them in it. He always had them in it. And that's his motivation. He wants to win these games for his team. He'll do anything and everything he can to win these games. He'll take the burden of everything if his team can win the game. And he did that. He did that. He did that on Sunday. He absolutely did. Because when you talk about a player where the Bengals are scoring at will, the defense can't stop anything, and most of the time with quarterback play from players not named Lamar Jackson and maybe a select other few, that game goes from 3 points to 10 points to 17 points to 24 points. It spirals. But for Lamar Jackson, he never let the lead get above 10. He always had an answer. He answered the Bengals. So instead of that spiraling, it was 3 to 10, back down to 3, back to 10, back to 3, back up to 10, back down to 3. It never got too far out of hand to where after the game we heard Tyler Linderbaum talk about it. And he said, the message from the offense and the defense was get one stop. We'll win you this game. We'll win this game for us. And that's exactly what happened. Marlon comes up with an awesome interception, and the rest is history. And Derrick Henry was gushing over Lamar late in just everything. He went far into the night, it felt like. Not actually, but he talked about Lamar pretty much any opportunity he had on the field post-game, during his media availability. Derrick Henry, quote, that was like third MVP level for him. Best player in the league. He's the GOAT for a reason. This is after Derrick Henry obviously praised Lamar after the contest in week 4 against Buffalo. Derrick Henry is, one of Lamar's biggest supporters. And I love that. And I hate this narrative of Lamar that, there's all this negative conversation around him in national media circles, but everybody in the NFL loves him. You barely ever, I don't even know if I have ever heard someone talk bad about Lamar, both on or off the field in NFL circles, player-wise, right? It's his peers love him. His peers respect him. Why doesn't he get that same respect? And again, we'll see what national media headlines come out today. If you're watching this maybe in the afternoon on Monday today, maybe some of those have come out. Obviously, at the time of this recording, I don't know any of them because nobody's awake right now. So I'm recording this. But I don't get it, where guys like Derrick Henry, his teammates, his opponents, everybody loves him. Everybody sees the greatness, but somehow he still gets talked down on. And I don't like that at all. So amazing game from Lamar. One of the best of his career, as I mentioned, and so many moments we'll look back on. When Lamar retires and hangs it up, we'll look back on this game as one of the best, and all of the highlights, all of the amazing moments, the comeback, and the pure joy that was felt in this game. We'll feel it over and over and over again, because this was an absolute Lamar Jackson masterclass. Coming up in the final part of the show, we'll continue recapping the Ravens and Bengals game from week 5. So be sure to stay tuned. Lots to get to on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So for that Ravens and Bengals game, man, I mean, if you had the over on Lamar Jackson passing yards, over on Zay Flowers receiving yards, you're probably living large on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. And the show is brought to you by DK Law Group. When you need a law firm, do you want the legal runaround, or would you rather have a no-nonsense approach? Well, you get the latter with DK Law Group. DK Law Group is a Maryland-based law firm who is redefining the legal process with their modern approach. DK Law Group specializes in real estate law, estate planning, business law, and family law. They're tech-savvy. They treat clients like family, and they focus on keeping your legal solutions simple. DK Law Group is a woman-led firm with Diana Khan at the helm. Diana has been called an unparalleled legal expert by some. One of the things I'll quickly notice with DK Law Group is their transparent pricing. They believe in clarity and cost, and no one left in limbo. DK Law Group knows that speed is key. By leveraging technology, DK Law Group streamlines the process to serve you better and faster. Contact DK Law Group today at dklawmd.com. Locked On listeners and call today to schedule a free 30-minute consultation when you mention the tagline, Empowering Legacies. We are back. Our final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher still here with you. Ravens win. It's kind of weird for me to say that after how that game went on Sunday, but Ravens win 41-38 in overtime over the Bengals. Wild, wacky, and crazy, as I said, as we opened up the show. Unbelievable win for this team. They moved to 3-2. Cincinnati falls to 1-4. And I really appreciate everybody for tuning in today, making Locked On Ravens both a part of your day and your first listen each and every day. Again, be sure to subscribe here in video form where you can catch us 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, plus bonus content. We do instant reaction episodes. Those are live and obviously available for playback in video form after the fact, and also in audio form. Hey, same show, both audio and video. All the content you get in video form is the same you get in audio form and vice versa. And it depends however you want to watch or listen, right? So if you're listening on your way to work, or maybe you're watching just at home on your TV, or maybe on your phone, your laptop, appreciate everybody. If you want your 5 days a week of Daily Ravens coverage, be sure to keep it here on Locked On Ravens. And be sure to tell a friend, tell a family member that we are here for them as well 5 days per week. We're growing up the communities here in video form. We are almost at 9,000 subscribers, almost halfway there. So be sure to subscribe. Would again really appreciate that. And in audio form, that community is growing each and every single day. So continue listening over there as well. Man, we have so much to dive into with the final segment here. We're going to just do kind of a general recap and talk about the events that happened. So let's start with the general game recap here. Baltimore 41, Cincinnati 38, offensive showdown. It was a lot of yards in this game. Almost 1,000 total yards between these two teams. 520 for the Ravens, 442 for Cincinnati. Cincinnati had more passing yards than the Ravens did. Now, again, how passing yards work, for those who are a little confused about, well, what do you mean Lamar had more passing yards than that and Joe Burrow had more passing yards than that? This is after sack yards are taken out of the equation. So quarterbacks don't get penalized for sack yards in terms of they get taken away from those stats. They don't individually, but they do get taken away from team total passing yards. So player not punished for it, team is punished for it in terms of stats. So 371 for Cincinnati, 345 for the Ravens. Cincinnati averaged more yards per pass, 8.8 compared to 8.0. Cincinnati, again, hit a bunch of deep plays down the field. So obviously that is where that happened, because we saw Cincinnati kind of was the short game king with the slants that we saw. The Ravens got torched on those. And then the Ravens kind of were middle of the field with some deep shots in there. Completely even in yards per play, 6.8 to 6.8. Again, the rushing wasn't really a factor in this game. Baltimore's run defense, again, held Cincinnati. I think that number was 3.1 yards per carry, right in line with their 3.0 yards per carry average on the year. Third down percentage was bad for both defenses, good for both offenses. Baltimore converted on 10 of 15 third down, so 66.6% on third down. The Bengals, 8 of 14, so 57.1 for the Bengals. Great offensive conversion-wise. Seemed like the Bengals just wanted to get to third down to convert on the Ravens, and honestly, vice versa for the Ravens on the Bengals. The defense was terrible in this game. I mean, all around. Ravens secondary was atrocious for the most part. Marlon comes up with a big interception, but Marcus Williams was bad. Brandon Stevens had a lot of bad moments. Nate Wiggins got torched on a couple plays. Marlon had some miscommunications in there, but obviously the interception was key. It was tough. It was really, really tough. You know, Eddie Jackson had bad moments in this one. And then on the Bengals side, Geno Stone played the worst game out of all of them, in my opinion. Even, you know, I know people are kind of flaming Marcus Williams for his game. I thought that Geno Stone played worse than anybody out on the field, you know, and I know those are kind of harsh words. Geno's a good dude, but it's been rough for him since going over to Cincinnati. He's been one of the worst graded players at his position since going over there. and he was biting on play fakes and missing tackles and giving up touchdowns. And it was a mess for Geno. But the Ravens and Bengals were able to capitalize on that. But the thing was, the Ravens were able to capitalize more on the Bengals' mistakes. The Bengals were able to capitalize on the Ravens' mistakes. Now, the Bengals did capitalize on the Ravens' mistakes, a.k.a. John Harbaugh. Right there it is. I promised you. I promised we weren't going to miss it here. John Harbaugh with inexcusable end of first half clock management. Again, for those who don't know the sequence, or maybe you forgot the actual intricacies that led up to it, it was a lot, because you don't expect these things to happen, but somehow, some way, like, we kind of see them happen, and you're like, what? Okay. So the Ravens ended up getting the ball back with 3:23 left in the second quarter, and they ended up running a play with Derrick Henry for a yard. They were pinned at their own 14, and then Nelson Aguilar picks up 4 yards, and then Lamar Jackson ends up scrambling for 4. And then John Harbaugh goes for it at the 23-yard line, his own 23-yard line. He goes for that play. Charlie Kohler, direct snap, sneak it in, gets the first down. But then John Harbaugh, with that super aggressive call, still doesn't call timeout. Like, he runs the clock like he wants to get to halftime. So they waste 50 seconds off the clock, to where Lamar throws an incompletion to Nelson Aguilar. And then Lamar hands the ball to Justice Hill, and Justice Hill gains no yards. And so, okay, you're kind of thinking, all right, it's 3rd and 10, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, excuse me. And you're like, okay, well, they're just going to run this ball down to halftime, right? Like, whatever, run the clock down. Harbaugh calls a timeout with 49 seconds left. And the Bengals weren't going to call the timeout. Like, the Ravens were the ones that did it. Harbaugh was the one that did it. And the Bengals were playing scared the entire game, as evidenced by it was 3rd and 10. They didn't want to call timeout to try to get the ball back. They wanted to go to halftime. The Ravens, I don't know what the heck they wanted to do, but Harbaugh gave them a timeout on 3rd and 10. Lamar misses a pass to Zay. The Bengals get the ball back, and they score on that. So John Harbaugh gives the Bengals 8 points, and the defense gives the Bengals 8 points at the end of the half. And then you see the other blunder by Zach Taylor, which is Lamar fumbles a snap in overtime, and the Bengals get it at their own, 38-ish, I think it was. Or not their own, excuse me, the Ravens 38. 3 straight run plays for no gain to set up a 53-yard field goal. Bad hold, bad snap, and they miss, and the Ravens go win the game. Inexcusable coaching by Zach Taylor there. That's fireable to me. I mean, the Harbaugh thing was inexcusable too, but like the Zach Taylor thing, how do you play that scared when you're torching the Ravens in the secondary? Hey man, I'll take it. I'll take it. Baltimore will take it. Like, thank you. But just disaster all around in this game. That's why it was such a weird game. It was just a really weird game overall. But we did get some other news. Marlon Humphrey, after the game, again, had the key interception and went live on Instagram and said that he respected Lamar, talked to Lamar before he said he could go on the live, but Lamar didn't want to be on it himself. He left the locker room in a boot after the win. We don't know the severity of the injury. We don't really know what's going on at the time of this recording. I'm sure we'll get more clarity on it today when John Harbaugh speaks, maybe. But it would be a tough blow to lose Marlon, especially when he is one of the lone bright spots in that secondary right now. And then, as promised, AFC North standings, your Baltimore Ravens are number 1 in the division. Again, technically tied with Pittsburgh with the same record at 3-2, but Baltimore has the divisional win over Cincinnati. The Ravens-Bengals game was the only divisional game that's been played so far, so the Ravens have the divisional tiebreaker over Pittsburgh. And then at 3, Browns and Bengals, but obviously with the Bengals lost, they default to 4, and the Browns are at 3, although I don't expect it's going to be a 2-team race between the Ravens and the Steelers. The Bengals have a good offense. The defense is too bad. The Browns are just a dumpster fire right now. So Ravens and Steelers, after the Steelers lose to Dallas the last second, they are technically tied for first, but the Ravens do have the tiebreaker, so we're calling it like it is. Ravens, top of the North, top of the division. You absolutely love to see it. Final thoughts from this game. Well, obviously for today, not for the week. But in terms of box score, I thought that, Derrick Henry struggled for the most part in this game. Credit to Cincinnati for stopping him. On the defensive side of the ball, Nnamdi Madubuike was huge. Trenton Simpson had some great plays. Roquan had some good and some bad moments. Kyle Hamilton looked like he got a little banged up in this game. Tavius Robinson had a big sack. So, I mean, Travis Jones was eating up blockers. So just all around a crazy game, but the Ravens win it 41-38, and they move to 3-2. And that's the most important thing here. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. And be sure to like and subscribe in video form, follow along in audio form for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up tomorrow, more Ravens content. So be sure to stay tuned. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.